So friends, welcome again to the chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita. In the last class, we did up to verses 59, and we are going to catch up from there itself. And I'm going to repeat the shloka 59 because we were only able to touch it superficially, and today we'll go deeper into it. विषया विनिवर्तन्ते निराहारस्य देहिना रसवर्जं रसोऽप्यस्य param drishtva nivartate. In English, the man who physically fasts from sense objects finds that the sense objects fall away for a little while, leaving behind only the longing for them. But he who beholds the Supreme is freed even from the longings. So let us understand what this meaning is. So the simplest meaning is that just by removing the sense objects from your range of vision or of hearing is not sufficient to remove the longings of the sense objects. So even if you have removed yourself from an environment which is conducive to sense temptations, but the desires stay in your mind, the sense longings are still in your mind, even then you are in a risky state of affairs, because any time from the subconscious mind, any time you again have contact with the sense object, the sense longing will spring up, and again you will go down the way if you fall into the temptation. So then what is the way out? The way out is also given in the shloka, that the only way out is to be able to touch the pure absolute consciousness and bliss of God, of divine. Because once you have tasted that bliss, once you have touched the hem of that bliss and ecstasy, then the sense pleasures with their petty enticements will not be able to tempt you, because those pleasures will seem very, very petty in front of the infinite and ever new divine joy. So this is what Guruji is saying to us. He says, Yoga says to fill the mind to the brim with the joy of God. In that overwhelming bliss, can one still long for sense pleasures? Yoga is thus the true royal road to salvation. Well, easier said than done. So the question is, how do we say no to the senses? Because when we are living in this physical world, the senses are the main data collectors from this world. They help us to live in this world. So how do we say no to them? Firstly, why do we say no to them? And secondly, how do we say no to them? So why we should say no to sense pleasures is because they bind us into this physical existence. And because the senses are so limited, like the eyesight can see only a few nanometers of wavelength of light, the ears can hear only a few megahertz of the entire available wavelength of sound. So basically the senses are very, very limited in themselves. Therefore, they restrict our knowledge to that data only. We know that X-rays exist, we know gamma rays exist, we know beyond that so many radiation exists, but we are not able to see it because our sense organ is limited. And therefore, we are not able to perceive the entire universe, which is actually our birthright. So that is why if we keep hankering behind or after sense pleasures, then our experience of the universe is going to stay limited, to the physical body and the mind instrument. We are never ever going to be able to perceive the soul, which in its vastness is infinite and eternal. Therefore, we definitely need to say no to the senses. Why? Because we want to expand our knowledge to infinity. We want to know the essence of the universe, and we want to know the essence of who we are. Now, the second question is, how do we say no to the senses? Not a very difficult answer. So certain psychologists have, analyzed the lives of successful people, and they say, why are successful people, whether it's in business or in art or in science, are able to say no to so many things? So for example, scientists who is fixed on a new discovery or an invention will easily say no to parties, to social gatherings, to wasting time on television, and to so many other things that involve the majority of the public. He is easily able to say no to these people. Same is for a creative artist, same is for an astronaut, same for an athlete who's preparing for the Olympics, or a successful businessman. They are able to say no to petty things because they have a resounding yes for one particular thing. They are so fixed in their goal and direction that it is very easy for them to let go of petty pleasures. So, for the yogi, for the truth seeker, what is the resounding yes for? It is for God realization. It is for self realization. When we are so fixed in our goal of God realization or realizing our Atman, then it is going to be easy to say no to sense temptations and sense pleasures. Therefore, we all have to understand that the purpose of this very life is God realization and self realization. And if we do not keep that as the goal, then we are going to keep wandering in this limited world of the senses, which of course our heart is not fulfilled with it. We are always seeking, even the richest of them of people, even the best intellectual, all of them feel empty in their hearts. They are not fulfilled. So if we want to feel fulfilled, then we have to keep our aim as God realization. If we keep our aim as God realization and we are very determined and yearning for it, then it is going to be easy to say no to the senses. This brings us to the next shloka, which is shloka number 60. Yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipaschitaha indrayani pramatini haranti prasabham manah. हे कुंती पुत्र, उत्सुक चंचल इंद्रियां ऐसे व्यक्ति की चेतना को भी बलात् हर्ष लेती हैं जिसे उच्च ज्ञान प्राप्त है और जो पूर्ण मुक्ति के लिए प्रयासरत है. O son of Kunti Arjuna, the eager, excitable senses do forcibly seize the consciousness even of one who has a high degree of enlightenment and is striving for liberation. So this verse and the few next are going to be an extension of shloka number 59, and they will further explain as to how powerful the senses are. Okay, so the essence of this shloka is that no one is safe till one realizes his or her oneness with spirit. So unless we reach the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, unless we realize 24/7 that we are one with the infinite, that we are Brahman itself, till then we are in the realm of Maya, in the realm of duality, and till then we are going to be, it is going to be easy for us to fall down the pathway of temptation whenever it is brought in front of us. So then not only do we keep our direction and goal of God realization, but we strive hard for it, because unless we touch that God realization, we are going to be at risk of being, of missing the point, or of being, sidetracked into the alleys of delusion into this world. And therefore, we have determination in the heart should be very, very fixed. And here I'll just bring in a parallel from the Bible, where the first commandment of Jesus is, he says, love the Lord thy God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength, and with all your soul. So when he says with all your heart, it means that you should have no desire other than desire for God. When he says all your mind, he means all your attention should be focused single pointedly on the attainment of God, or on the love of God. When he says all your strength, it means all your available energy, your prana, should be again directed towards God realization or the love of God. And when he says all your soul, means your entire being. And that is exactly what is being said in this shloka, that unless you have fully your heart, mind, intellect, every fiber of being is committed to God realization, till then you will not be able to really completely say no to sense temptations and be fully liberated from their tentacles. Okay. So, Master explains this further. He says, a devotee may long separate himself from the objects that excite temptation in the senses, and thus he may rashly believe that their inner luring is gone. They are quite as likely to be merely dormant, hibernating within him, ready to spring into movement in sudden contact of suitable circumstances. So, until you have weeded out your subconscious mind of every longing, every desire of sense enjoyment, the risk of falling back into temptation is always going to be there. Therefore, beware. No germ of evil, however seemingly insignificant, should be allowed to remain in your consciousness. So, here, when we say, just give me a moment. Yeah. So sometimes, we say, okay, now I'm not going to lie. I'm always going to speak the truth. I'm just giving an example of how we work in this world. And then pretty much we are very close to not lying any time. But sometimes we are tempted into thinking that, maybe just a little lie. Maybe I have not been late 99 times to my office, but one day it appears that getting late is genuine. So therefore, let me just lie for one time. I'm sure this will not be counted. So this just shows. So I'm not going into the judgment whether this is right or wrong, but what I'm saying is this just shows that our subconscious mind still has the tendency, even if it is a fraction, even if it is a very, very small percentage, of still going towards the temptation which is against dharma. And same is for sense objects and sense temptations. So when we have this in our subconscious mind, it is for two reasons. Firstly, we want temporary pleasantness, or we want to avoid temporary trouble. And secondly, we have still not tasted the bliss of pure honesty, of pure truthfulness, of pure bliss or oneness with divine. And therefore, we are tempted again and again to go into the subconscious mind, take out a little defect which is still there in our perfection. We have not perfected ourselves completely. And we take the excuse of saying that, usually I'm not like this, but maybe today I will try to do this. Now, you may think that this is a very tall order, that spirituality is demanding and asking a lot from you. Yes, it is. Whether you think of it as a good news or a bad news, yes, the Bhagavad Gita or any scripture will not come down to our level of human consciousness. Actually, it has come down to show us a way and way out. But it will not reduce its principles to our state of, casual awareness or casual understanding of this world. It is we who have to work with perfection, for perfection, and do our best. Now, in this, what Master has said, so we should not be discouraged and we should not feel guilty if we have somehow not been able to uproot from our subconscious mind all the imperfections that we have. Why? For two reasons. One, because love is above law and we are all God's children and God loves all of us, and all He asks is that we love Him in return. And the other is the promise of the Guru. When the Guru comes in your life to take you to God realization, he stays with you till eternity, until you have found God. And in our case, Paramahansa Yogananda has promised, he has said, if you practice even 1/100th of what I am teaching you, then you will find God in this very lifetime. So therefore, there is no reason to be discouraged, yet we should know that the principles are high, the ideals are high, and we need to straighten our spine, we need to put in self-effort, and we should not leave the direction towards God that we have undertaken, whether slowly or sometimes fast. In whichever way, we should keep going in that direction towards our goal. The wise man should introspect and find out whether his greed, sex temptation, love of physical beauty, desire for flattery, and so forth have been actually slain by wisdom, or whether they are only feigning demise. Now, Master chooses his words beautifully, is immaculate with his words, extremely perfect. So sometimes we may think that, now I am above praise and blame. And then suddenly, out of the blue, somebody criticizes me. And then suddenly I'm having that victim consciousness. And suddenly I'm blaming the other for that criticism. So please check in yourself. All of us will have some imperfection in ourselves. So let us examine each night, let us examine and introspect where the direction of our life is. Where are we going? Are we improving than before? There is no competition with anybody outside ourselves. Just check with yourself. Am I better than before? If I was an angry person, do I have more control over my anger? If I was a fearful person, do I have more control over my fear? So all of that you have to introspect and check each day. Even without the outward contact of specific objects, the five senses may internally be excited by the mere thought. So sometimes you may not have a physical contact, but in your mind. So, for example, a person who is a sex addict, and even though he shuns the physical environment, but in his own mind, if he's imagining and if he's fantasizing about the same things, then he is not free from that addiction. Then he needs to work with his mind. No devotee, this is a warning from Yogananda ji, he says, no devotee should underestimate the formidable power of the subconsciousness, whose tentacles are far more reaching than those of the conscious mind. So again, what is the solution to this? If subconscious mind is so powerful, if those hidden things can take us down, bring us down, then what do? We do two things. Outwardly, yes, we remove ourselves from the company or the environment which instigates us to do evil or go down the negative way. On the other side, in the inward direction, we continuously do our meditative practices and spiritual practices so that we establish communion and oneness with spirit, which Master says is the safe zone. Unless you establish that oneness with spirit, with God, you are always going to be at risk. So we do both these things, and meditation here is going to be salvaging us. The techniques of meditation help us to stabilize ourselves and help us to go inwards. And therefore, regular, daily, sincere, devoted meditation is going to be of great help to be able to conquer the senses. This brings us to shloka number 61. Tani sarvani sanyamya yukta asita matparaha vashe hi yasyendryani tasya pragya pratisthita. वह जो अपनी सब इंद्रियों पर विजय प्राप्त करके अपनी आत्मा को मेरे साथ संयुक्त करता है, वह अपने परम अभीष्ट के रूप में मुझ पर एकाग्रचित रहता है। उस योगी का अंतर ज्ञान युक्त ज्ञान स्थिर हो जाता है, जिसकी इंद्रियां उसके वश में होती हैं। He who unites his spirit to me, having subjugated all his senses, remains concentrated on me as the supremely desirable. The intuitive wisdom of that yogi becomes steadfast, whose senses are under his sway. Okay. So, the senses of a God-united yogi, they understand that who is the real ruler. So once the yogi, in his union with God, when his soul is one with spirit, the soul becomes the king of the body-mind complex. And the senses also understand that who is the sovereign. Once they understand that the soul is the sovereign ruler, then the senses start to obey the soul. Before that, the soul has forgotten because of Maya and Avidya. The senses become the ruler. The blind mind, Dhritarashtra, the senses and the material objects, so the desires, all of this game of Kurukshetra, of the kingdom of the Kauravas, it begins because we are not yet in touch with the pure virtues that are within us, and we are not in communion with Krishna, who can help us to fight the battle. Okay. Interesting thing is that the yogi works with his intuitive wisdom, and that intuitive wisdom, from where does that come? Now we know that wisdom is one of the 8 aspects of the super consciousness, or 8 aspects of God. So wisdom has been implanted in each one of us, and through that intuitive wisdom, actually we connect with the cosmic wisdom. The yogi, through his practices, has awakened his intuitive wisdom, and from there, he is always connected with spirit, and therefore, he can put his actions, his words, and his intentions in alignment with spirit. And therefore, he can harmonize his life and organize his life more towards God realization. A person who is not having any intuitive realization is roaming in this world. It's like a jungle, the mental jungle, and where he's always confused what to do, how to do, what is the right path, and the senses confuse him further. But the yogi who has developed communion with God, has awakened his intuitive wisdom, will always be guided correctly by that. Okay, for this, what must the devotee do? Master says, first, you must withdraw the mind from the senses. And secondly, you must unite this mind with the inner deity, or with the inner consciousness. This we have said earlier also. But how do we withdraw the mind from the senses? That is the practical question. So now we know that the mind, the brain, the thinking mind, and the senses are connected through wires, in the sense afferent and efferent nerves. And we know that the electrical impulses that travel from neuron to neuron, which in yogic terms can be said as life force or prana, that is what connects the mind, the senses, and the brain. So if we were to, by some technique, withdraw the pranic energy from the sense telephone wires and keep it focused on the inner astral spine, and by some technique take it towards the brain, especially towards the prefrontal cortex, then we will be able to control the senses. That means we will be able to inwardly bring the power of the senses towards the mind. And then the mind can be, of course, focused by techniques of concentration and meditation. It can be then focused on the infinite presence at the spiritual eye. So, meditation techniques give us a specific scientific way by which we can achieve what is being said here in the Gita. Only by listening to the Gita, or by reading the theory of the Gita and saying, okay, the sense control, the senses have to be united in the mind, and having no idea as to how to do it, is just trying to, just swim in the ocean when you do not have enough lung strength to do so. But the Guru has come in our life. You have a specific technique. Follow those footsteps, and you will find that it is easy to achieve. Not so easy, but not impossible, I would say, to achieve the control over senses. Okay. The outer and inner control makes the wisdom of the devotee unswerving and unwavering. Okay. This brings us to a very, very interesting set of shlokas. So shlokas 62 and 63 are usually taken up together, and I'll read them both in Sanskrit, then of course Hindi and English. So what do these say? 62. ध्यायतो विषयान् पुंसा संगस्तेषुपजायते संगात् संजायते कामा कामात् क्रोधो अभिजायते 63 क्रोधात् भवन्ति सम्मोहा सम्मोहात् स्मृतिविभ्रम स्मृतिभ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशो बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति. In Hindi, इंद्रिय विषयों का चिंतन करने से उनके प्रति आसक्ति उत्पन्न होती है. आसक्ति लालसा को उत्पन्न करती है. लालसा क्रोध को जन्म देती है. क्रोध से भ्रम उत्पन्न होता है. भ्रम अपने स्वरूप की स्मृति का नाश करता है. उचित स्मृति नष्ट होने से विवेकशील बुद्धि का नाश हो जाता है. बुद्धि का नाश होने से आध्यात्मिक जीवन का अंत हो जाता है. Now in English, brooding on sense objects causes attachment to them. Attachment breeds craving, craving breeds anger, anger breeds delusion, delusion breeds loss of memory of the true self, loss of right memory causes decay of the discriminating faculty. From decay of discrimination, annihilation of spiritual life follows. This is a very practical, step-by-step descent of a noble person into towards the loss of spiritual life through these various steps. So we know that we have Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga, so 8 steps which take you to liberation, and these are 8 steps of descent, that how a noble, even a noble person can fall down the pathway of negativity and loss of spiritual ardor. So the first thing is he's saying brooding on sense objects. So when you keep thinking of a sense object over and over again, that is step number 1. What happens then? Second step, you develop attachment to that object. Number 3, you develop craving for that object. So craving means desire for that object. Number 4, if the desire is frustrated, you will develop anger. So once the anger is developed, then anger will lead to delusion and confusion. Once that happens, you will the memory of your spiritual knowledge and the memory of your true self will be lost. Once that memory is lost, then there is loss of the intellectual faculty of discrimination. That means your viveka is lost. This is step 7. And as step number 8, that means your spiritual life goes down the drain. Now let us understand this with few simple examples. I will take up very simple examples, but you will get a fair idea of where this is leading us. So step number 1 is brooding on a sense object. So for example, you want to buy a new expensive luxury car. So you already have a car and you're doing decent in your life. But as you are traveling on the road, you suddenly see that, there is this Ferrari or Lamborghini or maybe even BMW, which is going by your side. And that sense object, the image of that comes into your mind. And when you are back home, you are still thinking of that luxury car in your mind. Once you are continuously thinking of that luxury car day and night, you start to develop an attachment to that. And when you develop attachment, you start to think, oh, it would be nice if I could have it. That means the third step of craving and desire automatically is increasing in you. Now you have come to the point that you started by just seeing that luxury car on the road. But now in a couple of days, you are ending up, desiring it, craving for that luxury object, which was impressioned into your mind. Now you are craving for it, but at the back of your mind, you know that you do not have the sufficient funds to get that car. So what happens is you feel frustrated in yourself. So frustration and anger come in. And when frustration and anger come in, then you go into a weird delusional thought process. Either you fantasize that you will someday have that luxury car, or you start analyzing your finances. Is it some way that I can get this car? Can I get a loan over it? And so basically you are going into a restless state of a confused mind, where you are losing the intellectual capability to understand that in the first place you don't need the car at all, because you already have a decent car at home and you're already living a decent life. But this is how, any sense temptation can lead you to down the spiritual path. And once your intellectual wisdom is lost, then you are ready to, take that loan, which you may not be able to pay. So you do foolish things, you get entrapped by one sense object and one sense temptation. A similar subtle example would be thinking about a relationship. So if you are continuously thinking about someone that you want to be friends with, or someone you want to be intimate with, and you are continuously thinking about that person in your mind, thinking day in day out, you are thinking, and then of course in your own mind you develop attachment for that person. And once you develop attachment, let us remember that attachment is blinding. You only are able to see the good things about that person, and you forget all the negativity that the person may carry. So you are attached to that person, and now you start to crave and desire that person and that relationship. And in your subconscious mind, or in your, in fact, intellectual thought, you may think and know that this person is not available, or that person has already shunned you in some way. So then what happens? What develops? Frustration and anger. That anger and frustration will again lead to restlessness in your mind. It will lead to confusion in your mind. It will, and you will start to think that come what may, whatever I am ready to, give up anything to get this person in my life. And you start to do weird things, and that is where your spiritual, your intellectual goes, sense goes for a 6, and your spiritual life goes down the drain. Now think of the same situation when the Pandavas were playing the game of dice with the Kauravas, and this is exactly what happened. So Kauravas represent all the vices and all the temptations, and Duryodhan represents material desire itself. And the Pandavas, at some point, even knowing intellectually, the Yudhishthira was willing to give up his wife, his kingdom, and everything. He actually lost everything. So such is the power. So why is in that story Dharmayad Raj Yudhishthir is losing? Because one should remember that the power of Maya is very, very strong. Even the person who is very strong in intelligence and intellect can be, taken down because of the temptations of Maya. Therefore, we have to be beware. And once we know this stepwise descent into spiritual doom, there we should be very, very careful. And we will understand how we can prevent ourselves from going down this way. Okay, so an important thing that I would introduce here is the important step of anger leading to delusion. So an important twist happens once our desire is frustrated, and how the frustration that we develop, that anger that we develop, how it destroys our spiritual life. Now, anger works at, multiple levels. Even in the body, we know, even in our brain, when we are really angry, or if there is any strong emotion, we know that the limbic system or the amygdala is the place in the brain which gets activated, and that drains away all the energy from the prefrontal cortex. And prefrontal cortex is the area of the brain which it is good in decision making, in judgment making, in good social behavior, and all of those activities. But because energy and blood flow is diverted towards the amygdala, therefore the normal thinking brain actually changes and is not able to make right judgment. Besides, when anger comes, anger is like a fight, a flight phenomenon. So again, the hormones in the body also start to surge, and that also confuses the body mind complex. And besides that, the spiritual reason why anger leads to delusion is when you are angry, then you are thinking that this person has made a mistake, therefore I am angry. So you automatically divide the one infinite existence consciousness bliss into I and you. I am angry because either I am the victim or I am the predator in some way. And therefore, I have divided this whole thing into I and you. So I have brought in duality. And therefore, it is directly leading to delusion. The variety present in this universe obscures the fact that all of this is one. And this is delusion, this is Maya. Therefore, in all forms, we must understand that anger is of no use in this life. And we must, so people may say that sometimes, righteous anger is important. And I would say righteous anger is important only at the superficial level in you. For example, when you are getting angry at your child because you want to correct the child. So in your heart, what do you have? You have love. So there is no anger in your heart. But on the outset, you are behaving and you are playing the role of a parent. Therefore, at a superficial level, you have to be righteously angry. So even when you think it is righteous anger, please check in your heart. Is there peace in your heart? Is there love in your heart? And what is the intent of that anger? Only then a superficial anger is justified, when you have to correct a wrong. But if that anger, it affects your heart, if that anger takes you towards delusion, then it is not needed at all, because eventually you have to work only with yourself and not with people around you, although they are also part of your extended self. Okay. So let's understand a little bit more on this, what Master says, because these two shlokas are very, very important. Okay. An explanation of how Master says the loss of memory. So memory is what? So memory may be all the spiritual knowledge that you have gained, and memory or smriti may be of your remembrance of who you are, means your soul nature. What that does, it blocks your viveka or discrimination, or the ability to differentiate not only between the real and the unreal, but also between right and wrong. And therefore, when the steering wheel of discrimination in the mental car of a man's life is broken, he ends up in the ditch of misery. So, again, beautiful language by Master. Even he who has progressed far on the spiritual path may suddenly find some sense attraction catching hold of his consciousness. So, what does one do? Okay, now if you have come a little further and advanced in the spiritual journey, and you do recognize and find yourself going down this journey of spiritual negativity, so what do you do? So firstly, if you are not a yogi, if you are not a seeker, if you are not a sharp person, you will not recognize the sequence of events that is happening. But if you are on the spiritual path, the very fact that you can see this is happening is a great gain in itself, because only when you can see the downfall can you correct it. So how are you going to correct it? Master says immediate action should be taken, immediate self-control should be practiced, a stronger spiritual effort should be brought in, and your meditations should become deeper. So what happens is, let's go back to the luxury car example or the relationship, example. So you have seen that luxury car, you have liked it, and in your mind you find that you have thoughts which are telling you, let me buy this, oh, I wish I could have it. So immediately the yogi will recognize that a craving or a desire is getting activated in his mind, that the wave of desire is rising. The sharp yogi will immediately tell himself, will bring his intellectual capacity, which is not dead so far, and say, I already have a car and I do not need this, and this will only be a burden to me. So immediately he will bring in that, but even then sometimes by intellectual reasoning this does not go, and you still in your mind you are having that craving. Then what do? You deepen your meditation. Once you deepen your meditation, then the experience of peace of meditation will increase, and you will find that once you get up from your meditation, you don't have any more craving for the car. You feel that it is a nonsense thing. In a sense, it will add on to your burdens. You know it clearly, and all the bliss and peace that you're looking for in life is already available to you within yourself by the act of meditation. So the very purpose, the little pleasure that you were seeking the car for, is that purpose is lost because you have found the peace and happiness in your own self. Therefore, again, I will point out three things that you need to do as soon as you recognize that you are going down in the spiritual ditch. Then you immediately firstly, awaken, be alert. Secondly, bring in your intellectual wisdom at that point. Thirdly, increase your spiritual effort by prayer and asking the Guru's and God's help, and deepen your meditative practice. And you will find that you can be victorious over whatever temptation that you're trying to fight. Allowing the mind to dwell harmlessly on that attraction or to feed it in any way is to invite the ensuing consequences. Thus, yoga adjures man to maintain an iron grip on the thought system of his mind. Self control must not be lost even at the greatest provocation. When evil exists within, then what appears without is its double. He who conquers the mind conquers the world. Beautiful. Okay. This brings us to the next shloka, which is shloka number 64. Ragadvesha vayuktaistu vishayanindriyescharan atmavaschaira vidhyatma prasadmadhi gacchati. आत्म नियंत्रण वाला व्यक्ति वशीभूत इंद्रियों के साथ सांसारिक विषयों के बीच विचरण करते हुए तथा राग द्वेष से रहित रहकर अविचल आंतरिक शांति को प्राप्त करता है. The man of self-control, roaming among material objects with subjugated senses and devoid of attraction and repulsion, attains an unshakable inner calmness. Okay. So what is... Okay. So here again, the importance of sense control, of self-control is brought in. And there's a word prasadam in the second line of the shloka. So normally we think that prasad is that the food that we offer to the deity, and then after the offering, what we eat or what we get is the prasadam. So what is the prasadam that is mentioned in this shloka? And the prasadam is of unshakable inner calmness. So when you do the tapasya of controlling the senses and practicing self-control, this is like offering yourself to higher wisdom and towards God. Once you offer yourself towards God and deny the sense temptations, then you receive a good prasadam in result, and that is unperturbed inner calmness. And I'm sure we are all working towards that direction. Okay. Only the man of self-control knows how to behave in the material surroundings through which he must perforce roam and work. So yes, each of us needs to work in this world, and this world is that magical fair that keeps attracting us with its colors and fragrances and all the temptations. But only a man of self-control knows how to stay calm at his center and wander in this world untouched by the mud that is part of this world. The man of self-control puts on an armor of wisdom and non-attachment while he performs his duties in the tricky sense world. So again, two words, wisdom and non-attachment is developed. Now, does that mean that the man of self-control is like a very serious or a grave, very uptight man, and he walks like this, I am a man of self-control, and you ask him, why are you so uptight? And he says, I'm practicing self-control. No, not at all. It's never like this. A man who has practiced perfect self-control and has attained inner calmness is a very happy, gentle, and humble person who roams in this world, who does not have to show on the outside that he has any control, although he may have. He may be a lion of self-control within, but it is not necessary that he becomes egotistical because of that. But in fact, he becomes humbler, softer, and gentler in his work as he travels through this world. And this brings us to shloka number 65. Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanirasyopajaayate prasancheta sohayoshu buddhi parvatishthate. आत्मा के परमानंद में सब दुखों का नाश हो जाता है। वास्तव में परमानंद मग्न व्यक्ति का विवेक शीघ्र ही दृढ़ता पूर्वक आत्मा में स्थित हो जाता है। In soul bliss, all grief is annihilated. Indeed, the discrimination of the blissful man soon becomes established firmly in the self. So again, this shlok starts with the word prasade. So once a yogi has attained that inner calmness, then he is able to achieve the divine ecstasy. Why? Because calmness and peace are precursors to happiness. Most of us think that happiness is an excitable state of pleasure. And we are always confused thinking that some outward engagement will give me some excitement and then I will be happy. What we forget is that no object outside ourselves and no situation outside ourselves has the property or the quality or the power to give us happiness. It is our own inner bliss which is the fountain of happiness. When we see it in the world, when we have the pleasure of, let's say, tasting an ice cream, that is only a minuscule fraction of the real joy of our own soul. And when, with yoga, with the practice of meditation, with the practice of contemplation, when we unite our mind with the intellect and the intellect with the soul, and we know that the real source of happiness is I, myself. I means not the egoic self. I means my atmic self, that I am Ananda itself. And with that Ananda, which is within myself, which I can directly access and experience through meditation, I use that Ananda to find pleasure in this world. The problem is we forget the real Ananda, which is ourself, and we are focused, because we are working through the senses, we are focused only on sense pleasures, and we get trapped because to get a sense pleasure, we do certain karmas, and then the karma is going to have an effect because the universe has to stay in balance. And therefore, we are trapped in this cycle of karma and result, means cause and effect. And this cause and effect is eventually becomes the cause of our birth, death, rebirth again. Because once we have initiated some karmas without realizing that we have to complete the effects of it. And so sometimes one life, of course, one life of 80, 90, 100 years is not sufficient to reap the effects of all the karmas that we have initiated. Therefore, from a little craving and desire, we actually end up having so many, being born and dying so many times, because we have to finish the effects of those karmas. And until we gain wisdom, we continue to create more and more karma. Therefore, this cycle becomes ad infinitum. There is no way to stop it unless wisdom dawns upon us, unless a point comes where we get frustrated and disgusted and ask ourselves, why am I suffering? What am I doing? Whatever action I'm doing, why am I doing? What is the source of my intention? What is the source of my will? What is the source of my life? What am I supposed to do as a human? Until these higher questions dawn upon this person who is caught up in the machinery of karma and birth and rebirth, then this person starts to seek wisdom. And once the efforts become strong, when the seeking is very, very strong, then the guru appears in our life. And then he tells you how you can exit this wheel of reincarnation. So you see, a simple looking sense object and a sense temptation, where does it lead us? And why it is so important? Why all the religions say that desirelessness is the goal? Because only once we have no desire for these sense temptations, that we can realize who we are. And in our true nature, we are infinite itself. We are Ananda itself. So that is why this game of Maya is just holding us hostage. and it's creating a hypnosis that this is the only world that there is, that this is the only life that there is, and there is nothing beyond. Yet here comes the Bhagavad Gita, here comes Lord Krishna, here comes the Guru, and tells you that you are much more than what you think. You are that perfect Atman, infinite and eternal, and that you must seek the truth. And then Krishna also gives you step-by-step ways of how you can recognize and realize who you are. And therefore, the teachings of this Gita are incomparable. The Bhagavad Gita is manual of life. If we were to read it, and if we were to conduct our lives the way Krishna has advised us, then it is a salvation scripture, a moksha shastra. It promises to take us into freedom of our own being, into the bliss which is unconditional of our own being. And that is why this shloka says that one who enters perfect tranquility, perfect peace, also he attains perfect divine ecstasy and bliss, because the underlying condition of peace that is met here. Also, what is being said here is that man's wavering reason. So, when the light of soul happiness comes, that's what Master says, the accumulated darkness of incarnations is dispelled in a trice. So once you experience that calmness, that peace, and that bliss, the same thought will also go on into the next shloka. Then in a moment, you will realize that all the suffering that you went through was also delusional. Now, as soon as you have one glimpse of self-realization, if through regular meditation you even reach to the stage of Savikalpa Samadhi, or you even reach to the point where you do start to realize that you are more than this body-mind complex, in that instant you know the truth. Although you are not firmly established in the truth, so you are not yet in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, you are not firmly established in that oneness 24/7, but at least you have tasted that oneness, even to some degree. Then once you are convinced that you are more than the body and mind, not only does your spiritual effort increase, it should increase, but also you have started to taste the peace and bliss of your own being. And therefore, it becomes easy for you to compare that peace as compared to the things that you get in the world. And you can easily see that there is no comparison, that the things of this world give you very limited pleasure, which does not last at all. And yet the soul bliss and peace is much greater and long lasting. And that is who you are. And it is unconditional. You can just go within and access it. That's the beauty of the teachings of the Gita. Okay. Let's go to the last shloka for today's class, and that is shloka number 66. Nasti buddhiryuktasya na cha yuktasya bhavana na cha bhavayata shantir shantas kutah sukham. जो अयुक्त है, आत्मा में स्थित नहीं है, उसके पास ना तो ज्ञान होता है और ना ही ध्यान। ध्यान न करने वाले को शांति प्राप्त नहीं होती। शांति रहित मनुष्य को आनंद किस प्रकार प्राप्त हो सकता है? To the disunited, one not established in the self, does not belong wisdom, nor has he meditation. To the unmeditative, there is no tranquility. To the peaceless, how comes happiness? So, the last thought from the previous shloka is continued here, but important things. To the one who is not united to his souls, means who is not experienced even a little bit of what his soul self is. He is always confused. He does not have true knowledge, and he does not have focus of mind or meditation. And then the shloka says, without meditation, how will you have tranquility? Because what meditation does it quietens the body, it quietens the prana, it quietens the restless mind. Now, without quietening the restless mind, prana, and body, how will you taste the bliss of the infinite soul, which is the substratum of all of this? And if you are not able to touch the peace of your soul, then how can you expect to be happy in your life? Because the definition of peace itself is absence of sorrow. So, peace and pure joy or pure bliss are intricately linked to each other. Without peace, there is going to be no joy. Without meditation, there is going to be no peace. And when no wisdom, so no soul realization. So, we understand from this we need to control our senses. We need to turn inwards. We need to unite the mind with the intellect and perceives, quietening the body, prana, and mind. We need to perceive our oneness with our soul self and with the universal cosmic spirit. With that thought, my dear friends, we will end today's class and we will share the blessings that we have received with soul friends everywhere. Let us pray together. Divine Mother, beloved Lord Krishna, Thou art omnipresent. Thou art in all Thy children. Manifest Thy healing presence in all bodies, all minds, and all souls. Om. 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 Divine Mother, beloved Krishna, may Thy love shine forever on the sanctuary of our devotion, and may we be able to awaken Thy love in all hearts. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.